Papal Archives in pure audio.
Papa!
The following is a reading of the encyclical letter, Dilexit Nos, of the Holy Father Francis on the human and divine love of the heart of Jesus Christ. The letter cites many sources and contains many quotes. However, we have only included a reading of the paragraph numbers. This will make quick reference easier for those who wish to study the written text in more depth. The encyclical is freely available online from the Papal Archives, which contains a list of all the sources used. Enjoy. Introduction. 1. He loved us, St. Paul says of Christ, in order to make us realize that nothing can ever separate us from that love. Paul could say this with certainty because Jesus himself had told his disciples, "I have loved you." Even now the Lord says to us, "I have called you friends." His open heart has gone before us and waits for us unconditionally, asking only to offer us his love and friendship. For he loved us first. Because of Jesus, we have come to know and believe in the love that God has for us. Chapter 1. The importance of the heart. 2. The symbol of the heart has often been used to express the love of Jesus Christ. Some have questioned whether this symbol is still meaningful today. Yet living as we do in an age of superficiality, rushing frenetically from one thing to another without really knowing why, and ending up as insatiable consumers and slaves to the mechanisms of a market unconcerned about the deeper meaning of our lives, all of us need to rediscover the importance of the heart. What do we mean by the heart? 3. In classical Greek, the word cardia denotes the inmost part of human beings, animals, and plants. For Homer, it indicates not only the center of the body, but also the human soul and spirit. In the Iliad, thoughts and feelings proceed from the heart and are closely bound one to another. The heart appears as the locus of desire and the place where important decisions take shape. In Plato, the heart serves, as it were, to unite the rational and instinctive aspects of the person, since the impulses of both the higher faculties and the passions were thought to pass through the veins that converge in the heart. From ancient times, then, there has been an appreciation of the fact that human beings are not simply a sum of different skills, but a unity of body and soul with a coordinating center that provides a backdrop of meaning and direction to all that a person experiences. 4. The Bible tells us that the Word of God is living and active. It is able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. In this way, it speaks to us of the heart as a core that lies hidden beneath all outward appearances, even beneath the superficial thoughts that can lead us astray. The disciples of Emmaus, on their mysterious journey in the company of the risen Christ, experienced a moment of anguish, confusion, despair, and disappointment. Yet beyond and in spite of this, something was happening deep within them. Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road? 5. The heart is also the locus of sincerity, where deceit and disguise have no place. It usually indicates our true intentions, what we really think, believe, and desire, the secrets that we tell no one. In a word, the naked truth about ourselves. It is the part of us that is neither appearance or illusion, but is instead authentic, real, entirely who we are. That is why Samson, who kept from Delilah the secret of his strength, was asked by her, "How can you say, 'I love you,' when your heart is not with me?" Only when Samson opened his heart to her did she realize that he had told her his whole secret. 6. This interior reality of each person is frequently concealed behind a great deal of foliage, which makes it difficult for us not only to understand ourselves, but even more to know others. The heart is devious above all else. It is perverse. Who can understand it? We can understand, then, the advice of the book of Proverbs. Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Put away from you crooked speech. Mere appearances, dishonesty, and deception harm and pervert the heart. Despite our every attempt to appear as something we are not, our heart is the ultimate judge, not of what we show or hide from others, but of who we truly are. It is the basis for any sound life project. Nothing worthwhile can be undertaken apart from the heart. False appearances and untruths ultimately leave us empty-handed. 7. As an illustration of this, I would repeat a story I have already told on another occasion. For the carnival, when we were children, my grandmother would make a pastry using a very thin batter. When she dropped the strips of batter into the oil, they would expand, but then, when we bit into them, they were empty inside. In the dialect we spoke, those cookies were called lies. My grandmother explained why. Like lies, they look big, but are empty inside. They are false, unreal. 8. Instead of running after superficial satisfactions and playing a role for the benefit of others, we would do better to think about the really important questions in life. Who am I really? What am I looking for? What direction do I want to give to my life, my decisions and my actions? Why and for what purpose am I in this world? How do I want to look back on my life once it ends? What meaning do I want to give to all my experiences? Who do I want to be for others? Who am I for God? All these questions lead us back to the heart. Returning to the heart. 9. In this liquid world of ours, we need to start speaking once more about the heart and thinking about this place where every person of every class and condition creates a synthesis, where they encounter the radical source of their strengths, convictions, passions, and decisions. Yet we find ourselves immersed in societies of serial consumers who live from day to day, dominated by the hectic pace and bombarded by technology, lacking in the patience needed to engage in the processes that an interior life by its very nature requires. In contemporary society, people risk losing their center, the center of their very selves. Indeed, the men and women of our time often find themselves confused and torn apart, almost bereft of an inner principle that can create unity and harmony in their lives and actions. Models of behavior that, sadly, are now widespread exaggerate our rational technological dimension or, on the contrary, that of our instincts. No room is left for the heart. 10. The issues raised by today's liquid society are much discussed, but this depreciation of the deep core of our humanity, the heart, has a much longer history. We find it already present in Hellenic and pre-Christian rationalism, in post-Christian idealism, and in materialism in its various guises. The heart has been ignored in anthropology, and the great philosophical tradition finds it a foreign notion, preferring other concepts such as reason, will, or freedom. The very meaning of the term is imprecise and hard to situate within our human experience. Perhaps this is due to the difficulty of treating it as a clear and distinct idea, or because it entails the question of self-understanding, where the deepest part of us is also that which is least known. Even encountering others does not necessarily prove to be a way of encountering ourselves, inasmuch as our thought patterns are dominated by an unhealthy individualism. Many people feel safer constructing their systems of thought in the more readily controllable domain of intelligence and will. The failure to make room for the heart, as distinct from our human powers and passions viewed in isolation from one another, has resulted in a stunting of the idea of a personal center, in which love, in the end, is the one reality that can unify all the others. 11. If we devalue the heart, we also devalue what it means to speak from the heart, to act with the heart, to cultivate and heal the heart. If we fail to appreciate the specificity of the heart, we miss the messages that the mind alone cannot communicate. We miss out on the richness of our encounters with others. We miss out on poetry. We also lose track of history and our own past, since our real personal history is built with the heart. At the end of our lives, that alone will matter. 12. It must be said then that we have a heart that coexists with other hearts that help to make it a thou. Since we cannot develop this theme at length, we will take a character from one of Dostoevsky's novels, Nikolai Stavrogin. Romano Guardini argues that Stavrogin is the very embodiment of evil because his chief trait is his heartlessness. Stavrogin has no heart, hence his mind is cold and empty, and his body sunken in bestial sloth and sensuality. He has no heart, hence he can draw close to no one, and no one can ever truly draw close to him. For only the heart creates intimacy, true closeness between two persons. Only the heart is able to welcome and offer hospitality. Intimacy is the proper activity in the domain of the heart. Stavrogin is always infinitely distant, even from himself, because a man can enter into himself only with the heart, not with the mind. It is not in a man's power to enter into his own interiority with the mind. Hence, if the heart is not alive, man remains a stranger to himself. 13. All our actions need to be put under the political rule of the heart. In this way, our aggressiveness and obsessive desires will find rest in the greater good that the heart proposes and in the power of the heart to resist evil. The mind and the will are put at the service of the greater good by sensing and savoring truths, rather than seeking to master them as the sciences tend to do. The will desires the greater good that the heart recognizes, while the imagination and emotions are themselves guided by the beating of the heart. 14. It could be said, then, that I am my heart, for my heart is what sets me apart, shapes my spiritual identity, and puts me in communion with other people. The algorithms operating in the digital world show that our thoughts and will are much more uniform than we had previously thought. They are easily predictable and thus capable of being manipulated. That is not the case with the heart. 15. The word heart proves its value for philosophy and theology in their efforts to reach an integral synthesis. Nor can its meaning be exhausted by biology, psychology, anthropology, or any other science. It is one of those primordial words that describe realities belonging to man precisely insofar as he is one whole, as a corporeal-spiritual person. It follows that biologists are not being more realistic when they discuss the heart, since they see only one aspect of it. The whole is not less real, but even more real. Nor can abstract language ever acquire the same concrete and integrative meaning. The word heart evokes the inmost core of our person, and thus it enables us to understand ourselves and our integrity and not merely under one isolated aspect. 16. This unique power of the heart also helps us to understand why, when we grasp a reality with our heart, we know it better and more fully. This inevitably leads us to the love of which the heart is capable, for the inmost core of reality is love. For Heidegger, as interpreted by one contemporary thinker, philosophy does not begin with a simple concept or certainty, but with a shock. Thought must be provoked before it begins to work with concepts or while it works with them. Without deep emotion, thought cannot begin. The first mental image would thus be goosebumps. What first stirs one to think and question is deep emotion. Philosophy always takes place in a basic mood, Stimmung. That is where the heart comes in, since it houses the states of mind and functions as a keeper of the state of mind. The heart listens in a non-metaphoric way to the silent voice of being, allowing itself to be tempered and determined by it. The heart unites the fragments. 17. At the same time, the heart makes all authentic bonding possible, since a relationship not shaped by the heart is incapable of overcoming the fragmentation caused by individualism. Two monads may approach one another, but they will never truly connect. A society dominated by narcissism and self-centeredness will increasingly become heartless. This will lead in turn to the loss of desire, since as other persons disappear from the horizon, we find ourselves trapped within walls of our own making, no longer capable of healthy relationships. As a result, we also become incapable of openness to God. As Heidegger puts it, to be open to the divine, we need to build a guest house. 18. We see then that in the heart of each person, there is a mysterious connection between self-knowledge and openness to others, between the encounter with one's personal uniqueness and the willingness to give oneself to others. We become ourselves only to the extent that we acquire the ability to acknowledge others, while only those who can acknowledge and accept themselves are then able to encounter others. 19. The heart is also capable of unifying and harmonizing our personal history, which may seem hopelessly fragmented, yet is the place where everything can make sense. The gospel tells us this in speaking of Our Lady, who saw things with the heart. She was able to dialogue with the things she experienced by pondering them in her heart, treasuring their memory and viewing them in a greater perspective. The best expression of how the heart thinks is found in the two passages in St. Luke's Gospel that speak to us of how Mary treasured all these things and pondered them in her heart. The Greek verb symboline, ponder, evokes the image of putting two things together in one's mind and reflecting on them in a dialogue with oneself. In Luke 2:51, the verb used is dietere, which has the sense of keep. What Mary kept was not only her memory of what she had seen and heard, but also those aspects of it that she did not yet understand. These nonetheless remain present and alive in her memory, waiting to be put together in her heart. 20. In this age of artificial intelligence, we cannot forget that poetry and love are necessary to save our humanity. No algorithm will ever be able to capture, for example, the nostalgia that all of us feel, whatever our age and wherever we live, when we recall how we first used a fork to seal the edges of the pies that we helped our mothers or grandmothers to make at home. It was a moment of culinary apprenticeship, somewhere between child play and adulthood, when we first felt responsible for working and helping one another. Along with the fork, I could also mention thousands of other little things that are a precious part of everyone's life. A smile we elicited by telling a joke, a picture we sketched in the light of a window, the first game of soccer we played with a rag ball, the worms we collected in a shoebox, a flower we pressed in the pages of a book, our concern for a fledgling bird fallen from its nest, a wish we made in plucking a daisy. All these little things, ordinary in themselves, yet extraordinary for us, can never be captured by algorithms. The fork, the joke, the window, the ball, the shoebox, the book, the bird, the flower. All of these live on as precious memories kept deep in our heart. 21. This profound core, present in every man and woman, is not that of the soul, but of the entire person in his or her unique psychosomatic identity. Everything finds its unity in the heart, which can be the dwelling place of love in all its spiritual, psychic, and even physical dimensions. In a word, if love reigns in our heart, we become, in a complete and luminous way, the persons we are meant to be, for every human being is created above all else for love. In the deepest fiber of our being, we were made to love and to be loved. 22. For this reason, when we witness the outbreak of new wars with the complicity, tolerance, or indifference of other countries, or petty power struggles over partisan interests, we may be tempted to conclude that our world is losing its heart. We need only to see and listen to the elderly women from both sides who are at the mercy of these devastating conflicts. It is heartbreaking to see them mourning for their murdered grandchildren or longing to die themselves after losing the homes where they spent their entire lives. Those women who were often pillars of strength and resilience amid life's difficulties and hardships now, at the end of their days, are experiencing, in place of a well-earned rest, only anguish, fear, and outrage. Casting the blame on others does not resolve these shameful and tragic situations. To see these elderly women weep and not feel that this is something intolerable is a sign of a world that has grown heartless. 23. Whenever a person thinks, questions, and reflects on his or her true identity, strives to understand the deeper questions of life and to seek God, or experiences the thrill of catching a glimpse of truth, it leads to the realization that our fulfillment as human beings is found in love. In loving, we sense that we come to know the purpose and goal of our existence in this world. Everything comes together in a state of coherence and harmony. It follows that, in contemplating the meaning of our lives, perhaps the most decisive question we can ask is, do I have a heart? Fire. 24. All that we have said has implications for the spiritual life. For example, the theology underlying the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius Loyola is based on affection. The structure of the exercises assumes a firm and heartfelt desire to rearrange one's life, a desire that in turn provides the strength and the wherewithal to achieve that goal. The rules and the compositions of place that Ignatius furnishes are in the service of something much more important, namely the mystery of the human heart. Michel de Certeau shows how the movements of which Ignatius speaks are the inbreaking of God's desire and the desire of our own heart amid the orderly progression of the meditations. Something unexpected and hitherto unknown starts to speak in our heart, breaking through our superficial knowledge and calling it into question. This is the start of a new process of setting our life in order, beginning with the heart. It is not about intellectual concepts that need to be put into practice in our daily lives, as if affectivity and practice were merely the effects of, and dependent upon, the data of knowledge. 25. Where the thinking of the philosopher halts, there the heart of the believer presses on in love and adoration, in pleading for forgiveness, and in willingness to serve in whatever place the Lord allows us to choose, in order to follow in His footsteps. At that point, we realize that in God's eyes we are a thou, and for that very reason we can be an I. Indeed, only the Lord offers to treat each one of us as a thou, always and forever. Accepting His friendship is a matter of the heart. It is what constitutes us as persons in the fullest sense of that word. 26. Saint Bonaventure tells us that in the end, we should not pray for light, but for raging fire. He teaches that faith is in the intellect in such a way as to provoke affection. In this sense, for example, the knowledge that Christ died for us does not remain knowledge, but necessarily becomes affection, love. Along the same lines as St. John Henry Newman took as his motto the phrase cor ad cor loquitur, since beyond all our thoughts and ideas, the Lord saves us by speaking to our hearts from His sacred heart. This realization led him, the distinguished intellectual, to recognize that his deepest encounter with himself and with the Lord came not from his reading or reflection, but from his prayerful dialogue, heart to heart, with Christ, alive and present. It was in the Eucharist that Newman encountered the living heart of Jesus, capable of setting us free, giving meaning to each moment of our lives, and bestowing true peace. O most sacred, most loving heart of Jesus, Thou art concealed in the Holy Eucharist, and Thou beatest for us still. I worship Thee then with all my best love and awe, with my fervent affection, with my most subdued, most resolved will. O my God, when Thou dost condescend to suffer me to receive Thee, to eat and drink Thee, and Thou for a while takest up Thy abode within me, O make my heart beat with Thy heart. Purify it of all that is earthly, all that is proud and sensual, all that is hard and cruel, of all perversity, of all disorder, of all deadness. So fill it with Thee, that neither the events of the day nor the circumstances of the time may have power to ruffle it, but that in Thy love and Thy fear it may have peace. 27. Before the heart of Jesus, living and present, our mind, enlightened by the Spirit, grows in the understanding of His words, and our will is moved to put them into practice. This could easily remain on the level of a kind of self-reliant moralism. Hearing and tasting the Lord, and paying Him due honor, however, is a matter of the heart. Only the heart is capable of setting our other powers and passions, and our entire person in a stance of reverence and loving obedience before the Lord. The world can change, beginning with the heart. 28. It is only by starting from the heart that our communities will succeed in uniting and reconciling differing minds and wills, so that the Spirit can guide us in unity as brothers and sisters. Reconciliation and peace are also born of the heart. The heart of Christ is ecstasy, openness, gift, and encounter. In that heart, we learn to relate to one another in wholesome and happy ways, and to build up in this world God's kingdom of love and justice. Our hearts, united with the heart of Christ, are capable of working this social miracle. 29. Taking the heart seriously, then, has consequences for society as a whole. The Second Vatican Council teaches that every one of us needs a change of heart. We must set our gaze on the whole world and look to those tasks we can all perform together in order to bring about the betterment of our race. For the imbalances affecting the world today are in fact a symptom of a deeper imbalance rooted in the human heart. In pondering the tragedies afflicting our world, the Council urges us to return to the heart. It explains that human beings, by their interior life, transcend the entire material universe. They experience this deep interiority when they enter into their own heart, where God, who probes the heart, awaits them, and where they decide their own destiny in the sight of God. 30. This in no way implies an undue reliance on our own abilities. Let us never forget that our hearts are not self-sufficient, but frail and wounded. They possess an ontological dignity, yet at the same time must seek an ever more dignified life. The Second Vatican Council points out that the ferment of the gospel has aroused and continues to arouse in human hearts an unquenchable thirst for human dignity. Yet to live in accordance with this dignity, it is not enough to know the gospel or to carry out mechanically its demands. We need the help of God's love. Let us turn, then, to the heart of Christ, that core of his being, which is a blazing furnace of divine and human love, and the most sublime fulfillment to which humanity can aspire. There, in that heart, we truly come at last to know ourselves, and we learn how to love. 31. In the end, that Sacred Heart is the unifying principle of all reality, since Christ is the heart of the world, and the paschal mystery of his death and resurrection is the center of history, which because of him is a history of salvation. All creatures are moving forward with us and through us towards a common point of arrival, which is God, in that transcendent fullness where the risen Christ embraces and illumines all things. In the presence of the heart of Christ, I once more ask the Lord to have mercy on this suffering world in which he chose to dwell as one of us. May he pour out the treasures of his light and love, so that our world, which presses forward despite wars, socioeconomic disparities, and uses of technology that threaten our humanity, may regain the most important and necessary thing of all, its heart. This concludes Chapter 1 of the Papal encyclical Dilexit Nos by Pope Francis. Subscribe to easily access the other chapters. What papal documents would you like to hear? Be sure to let us know in the comments. Thank you for listening.
Papal Archives in pure audio.
Papa!